If someone had told me at 24 that I would become the secret fascination of a married couple twice my age, I would have laughed. And yet, desire rarely asks for permission. It seeps in quietly, insidious and irresistible, until the point of no return. My story wasn't like the usual tales of reckless youth. I had been careful, reserved in matters love, yet easygoing among friends. I always followed the rules. At 24, most of my peers had already crossed those thresholds I was still waiting for, the one person who mattered. At the time, I worked at my father's company. Logistics was my domain, my comfort zone, a place where I could breathe without spectacle. The business had been started some 30 years ago by my father and his partner, Mr. Spells, though I called him Kevin. My father handled merchandise, while Kevin ran logistics. Naturally, that's where I ended up. I was nothing extraordinary, a manager with a decent salary. But Kevin always had a way of making the ordinary feel charged. His wife would often stop by, carrying little treats, something sweet or homemade. And for a moment, the day felt complete. Routine, structured, safe, it was a rhythm that never skipped a beat. But looking back, I wonder if something inside me had already begun to shift, quietly stirring, waiting for the perfect spark. Kevin carried himself with a calm authority. A charm that never demanded attention but inevitably held it. He was older, yes, seasoned by decades of knowing how to move through the world, how to occupy space effortlessly. At the time I dismissed it, forced myself to dismiss it. Yet sometimes when he spoke, his gaze lingered just a fraction too long. A subtle weight pressed against my chest, a tightening in my stomach that I couldn't quite name. I ignored it. I had to. Most of my days were consumed by reports, shipment schedules, organizing timelines, mundane, predictable tasks that left the mind wandering if you weren't vigilant. And in those wandering moments, subtle undercurrents began threading through the quiet. Moments I couldn't quite explain, a tension that hovered between curiosity and something far more dangerous. It was ordinary on the surface, but beneath, the first tremors of desire were already beginning to stir. Lately, my thoughts had begun to wander unbidden, to places I hadn't allowed them before. There was something quietly intoxicating about the way Kevin moved through the office, deliberate, effortless, yet somehow magnetic. The way his voice dipped ever so slightly when he spoke to me. The brush of his fingertips when passing a file. It could have been nothing. Accidental, imagined, and yet the sensation burrowed deep, tugging at some corner of me I didn't understand. I tried to reason it away, telling myself I was reading too much into fleeting moments. But the awareness only sharpened. His presence lingered in my mind. In the way his shirt hugged his shoulders, the rolled-up sleeves revealing the strength of his forearms. The subtle scent he carried. Even the mundane became charged. And then there were the visits from his wife, warm smiles, freshly baked cookies, small gestures that should have felt innocent. And yet, every time, a quiet pang rose in me, a flicker of something I couldn't and wouldn't name. It was absurd. Kevin was my father's partner, a married man. Someone I had known my entire life. And yet, the atmosphere between us had shifted. Or perhaps it had always been this way, and I had only just begun to notice. I clung to the illusion that I was imagining it, though a small, undeniable truth lingered beneath my caution. The office was hushed now. Voices gone. Phone silent, the glow of dimmed monitors casting long shadows across empty desks. In this quiet, the space felt different, more intimate, more exposed. Like a secret waiting to be discovered. I kept my gaze fixed on the screen, feigning concentration, though my mind drifted far beyond spreadsheets and schedules. The weight of his nearness pressed against me in ways I couldn't articulate. I could feel it in the subtle warmth of his hand brushing mine, light yet heavy, carrying an unspoken tension that coiled and stretched, taut like a wire ready to snap. My chest tightened. I swallowed hard, trying to reclaim some sense of control, though every instinct whispered that the rules had already shifted, and that I might already be too far gone. Still not subscribed to Nasty Talks? Hit that button now to catch our stories every day. This was Kevin, the man who had been a constant in my life, guiding me through my first days at the company, a mentor, a family friend. Until now. His thumb moved, almost imperceptibly, tracing a slow line along my wrist. Absent-minded, almost innocent, or so it seemed. But there was nothing innocent about the way it made my pulse falter, about the heat that crept along my spine. Creeping and deliberate, dangerous in its subtlety. I drew my hand back, gentle but firm. He exhaled, a breath so soft it barely filled the space between us. And yet I felt it, felt the charge in the air, thick and humming, an energy I didn't want to name. "Think you need to rest," he said. Perhaps he was right. I rose quickly, gathering my things with motions that felt unnatural, too deliberate. I couldn't meet his eyes, not directly. My fingers trembled as I adjusted my bag, desperately needing space, needing distance to untangle the web of sensations that had taken root. He didn't speak, didn't move to stop me. But as I passed, the air shifted, a subtle lean, a faint motion, almost imperceptible, yet it reverberated through me. The brush of his presence lingered like a weight I couldn't shake. The hallway's cool air hit me like a jolt. A shock against skin that still tingled from where his hand had grazed mine. My heels clicked sharply on the tile, each step echoing the rapid beat of my heart. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing, that my body's response had no meaning. Yet every thought, every quiet moment, was infiltrated by him. By his voice, his hands, the weight of his gaze that seemed to follow me even now. I wanted to forget, to erase the way desire had flared without permission. The way I had felt it, and worse, the way I had liked it. Even at home, the thought of him refused to fade. It was there in the quiet. In the spaces between my breathing, in the shadows of memory, persistent, undeniable, and uncomfortably alive. And somewhere deep, I knew that nothing would ever feel ordinary again. His gaze, it made no sense. He was 50, had a family, a life meticulously built over decades. Why me? The daughter of his closest friend. Someone who had always been in the background of his world. But never like this. Did he want something forbidden? A hidden affair tucked into the cracks of his perfect life? No, it was never that simple. I told myself I'd make sense of it later. When I was ready to confront it, to put words to the strange gravity pulling me toward him. Meanwhile, the days at work became unbearable. I avoided his eyes, kept my distance, performed the motions of professionalism, pretending not to feel the invisible desire pulling me closer. Yet somehow, I couldn't bring myself to leave the room when he was there. The torment was quiet, subtle, a paradox wanting to vanish, and at the same time craving proximity. His wife's visits punctuated the routine, a living reminder of boundaries I should respect. But my focus always returned to him, drawn like a moth to a flame. I needed air. The project finally ended. There was nothing left to keep me tethered. I packed my bags, stepping out on a solo escape, not running, just pausing. A deliberate attempt to put distance between my thoughts and my body, to remind myself of the world beyond the office walls. To explore new places, new people. Maybe even to find the one I had been waiting for. But the month passed too quickly. Days slipped through my fingers like water. I wandered through unfamiliar streets, lost myself in conversations with strangers. Let the blur of the world around me replace the insistent pull in my mind. Still, it did nothing to quiet the memory of him. I returned home unchanged. Restless, unsettled, haunted by the thought of him. As if his absence had amplified his presence. The office, when I came back, felt different not in sound but in tension. His absence left an echo. A void that seemed to hum in the air, unsettling in its intensity. A month of trying to forget him had only sharpened the pull. The memory of his presence, of the subtle ways he touched my world, lingered, impossible to ignore, impossible to escape. Her presence was unmistakable. She moved through the room with effortless ease, smiling as she always had, warm, reassuring. Today, there was something different. She had known me since childhood, shared countless dinners across the table. Even once brushed my hair from my face with the gentle care of a second mother. When I was too young when it meant to be a woman. And now, she wouldn't leave my side. Lunch, then coffee, and by late afternoon, she insisted on making dinner for the two of us. I told myself it was kindness. Generosity, maternal instinct, but there was a tension beneath it I couldn't ignore. The way she held my gaze just a fraction too long. The way she positioned herself, subtly angled toward me, as though waiting for me to notice something I couldn't name. Her touches lingered longer than necessary. A hand resting on my arm, a gentle curve of her palm brushing against mine as she handed me a glass of water. Twice she hugged me, the embraces softer than needed. Her warm breath brushing my hair. I didn't understand. She had always been affectionate. Yes, Wakan, but today, every movement, every glance carried an intent. A quiet calculation, a hesitation that measured my reaction to her presence. By evening, she offered to drive me home. I hesitated. The thought of sitting in a confined space with her, the subtle tension curling between us like smoke, made my skin tighten. And yet, refusing felt impossible. Refusing would have felt rude, and part of me couldn't deny it. Curiosity was already pulling me forward. The drive began quietly. The soft hum of tires against asphalt filling the space between us. Then she spoke. A measured breath, a gentle inhale. And the words that instantly made the air inside the car feel thick, almost suffocating. Betty, Kevin, and we wanted to ask you something. I blinked, unsure if I had misheard. She kept her eyes on the road, fingers tapping idly against the wheel. Then, as if this moment had been rehearsed 1,000 times, her voice softened, dipping into a tone that was intimate, deliberate, almost predatory in its calm. You're a wonderful girl. But we have a very monotonous life, and well, you know, in bed. The words landed like a stone in my chest, heavy, impossible to ignore. I swallowed. Hands curling tightly into my lap, heat creeping up my neck, a shiver of tension spreading across my skin. Why was she telling me this? The streetlights flickered against her face, revealing an expression I'd never seen before. The words wrapped around me like a tangible force, pressing into every nerve, making the car feel smaller, the engines hum louder, the silence outside irrelevant. I sat frozen, breath shallow, heart hammering. Join us. It wasn't a casual suggestion tossed carelessly into the air. It was precise, deliberate, premeditated. She had planned this. Waited for the perfect moment, and now there it was, laid bare before me. I turned slightly, trying to catch her gaze from the corner of my eye. Her fingers tightened around the wheel, but her face remained calm, composed, as if we were simply discussing weekend plans. My chest constricted. A strange warmth spread across my skin, unfamiliar, unsettling. My heartbeat thudded so loudly I was certain she could hear it. She exhaled softly, almost sensing my unease, then spoke again, in the same smooth, practiced tone. We would like you to join us, of course. You can refuse, but I ask you to at least try. The words lingered, confident, unshakable, and in world outside the car seemed to disappear. There was only her, the offer, and the impossibly thin line between curiosity and fear stretching taut between us. My breath hitched. You can first get to know me better, she murmured, her voice dipping low, flowing over me like silk. Then Kevin. Then the two of them. Each word sank deeper, twisting inside me, unraveling corners of myself I hadn't realized were exposed. I couldn't speak, move. Nothing in my life had prepared me for this. My body felt separate from my mind, heat and cold warring beneath my skin. The air in the car thickened, heavy, almost suffocating. The space between us became impossibly small, charged, magnetic. Then she reached out. Her fingertips brushed my jaw lightly, testing, waiting for a reaction I couldn't give. I didn't stop her, I couldn't. And then, soft lips, deliberate, pressing against mine. A quiet exhale. Warmth spreading from her mouth to mine. The gentlest pressure, and yet my breath faltered, my body stiffening, not in rejection, but in shock. In the weight of what was happening. The moment stretched, suspended between hesitation and surrender. The world outside the car blurred, irrelevant. Swallowed by the intensity of the enclosed space. Her lips left a quiet imprint, delicate yet electric, something foreign yet unnervingly familiar. My chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths, betraying the chaos inside me. She didn't rush. Every subtle movement, every brush of her fingertips, every soft sigh was deliberate, letting me feel the full weight of the moment. The parking lot was silent. The rest of the world oblivious. The car didn't move. Neither did I, at first. But my hands, driven by something beyond thought, began to explore. One by one, the buttons of her blouse came undone beneath my fingers. Her skin was warm, alive, her breath hitching slightly as my touch traced her form. A hand pressed against me in return, deliberate, demanding. My body tensed. then melted, unraveling under the weight of sensation. She shifted with practiced ease onto the passenger seat, guiding the rhythm of our shared tension. Every movement a careful step along the edge between control and surrender. A quiet rustle of movement shifted the air between us. And suddenly, the distance vanished, not with touch, but with tension, the invisible pull of attention, intent, and unspoken words. My heart pounded as if the world outside had dissolved, leaving only us suspended in this small, charged space. Every glance, every brush of movement carried weight, leaving me gasping, trembling, caught between disbelief and surrender. It wasn't about anything physical. It was the intensity of being seen, of being noticed in a way that made everything else fade away. Thoughts blurred. My mind chasing the spark of electricity that hung in the room, desperate to make sense of it. The night outside pressed against the windows, prickling against my awareness, while the room held a rhythm all its own. Her voice, soft and measured, brushed against me like silk. Now you can get to know him better. And suddenly, the office was transformed. The quiet hum of lights, the scratch of pens, the stillness of late hours, all of it melted into a world where words and glances spoke louder than actions. I stayed deliberately, knowing he would, too. We didn't speak. There was no need. The understanding was already there, heavy, unspoken, binding. Threading through the quiet of the room, I felt the weight of his presence more than anything else. Every glance, every subtle movement carried meaning I couldn't name. The tension between quotes silently, charged, as if the air itself had thickened. I traced the outline of his attention, sensing the shift in his focus, the way he leaned, the quiet rhythm of his breath. Each moment deepened the anticipation, a silent electricity threading between us. He leaned back, exhaling softly, his restraint clear in the smallest gestures. I moved slowly, testing boundaries with nothing more than words, glances, and the tension in the space we shared. The room seemed to shrink around us. The hum of late night lights and the quiet scratching of papers fading into the background. Every gesture was measured, deliberate. An unspoken dialogue of curiosity, hesitation, and trust. By the time the weekend arrived, the weight of what was to come had settled deep in my stomach. Standing outside their house, staring at familiar walls and windows that had framed so many childhood memories, everything felt different. Inside, the warmth of home and the comfort of routine greeted me, but beneath it, a quiet thrill tangled with hesitation. A sense that nothing would ever feel quite ordinary again. The air was thick with the faint trace of cologne and perfume. A memory of the lives intertwined here. The walls were lined with framed photographs, each one a frozen moment of laughter and togetherness. My parents appeared in some of them. Reminders of the life I had once touched in a different way. Now I was stepping into something new. We sat at the table. The quiet clink of silverware punctuating the unspoken weight of anticipation. She poured the wine steady, but I could feel the subtle flicker of her gaze. First to him, then to me. He sipped his whiskey slowly, measured, carefully controlling every movement. None of us spoke much. Yet the room pulsed with unspoken understanding. I was tense, aware that the balance of the evening on small gestures and silent glances. When dinner ended, we moved into the living area. The shift in energy was palpable. It wasn't about what anyone touched, it was about presence, proximity. The unspoken charge threading between us. I reached for her first, a hand lightly brushing, testing, reassuring. She met my attention, responsive, calm. He was there, too, steady, deliberate in his approach. The three of us navigated the tension together, a delicate balance of awareness, curiosity, and restraint. Each glance, each gesture carried weight, deepening the atmosphere, making every second feel suspended, charged with anticipation. The room seemed to shrink around us, charged with an energy I couldn't name. Every glance, every subtle movement, carried weight. There was no longer him, her, or me, only the pull between us, the invisible current threading through the space. I could feel it in the air, in the way hearts raced, breaths caught, and hands lingered a fraction too long. Every gesture became magnified, a brush of fingers, a shift in posture, a glance that lingered just a heartbeat too long. The tension was almost unbearable, a magnetic pull that drew us together while demanding restraint. Each moment built on the last, layering anticipation upon anticipation, a silent rhythm that neither of us could fully control. Time itself seemed to slow. The world outside the room faded. All that existed was the shared energy, the silent understanding of each unspoken thought, the delicate dance of presence and attention. Every small movement, every careful reach, carried a weight far beyond the physical, an intensity that left the heart racing and the mind spinned. The air between us thickened. It wasn't about what we touched or who moved first. It was the power of being seen, understood, and wanted in a way that had nothing to do with words. We existed in that moment alone, suspended in the unspoken, caught in a web of anticipation, curiosity and forbidden intrigue. And then, silence. A quiet pause where everything hung in the balance. My breath slowed, my senses sharpened. The energy remained tangible. A reminder of what had passed and what was still possible. There was no rush, no finality, only the tension, the unbroken connection. And the realization that nothing would ever feel ordinary again.